Oh yeah, I got it. All right, well, like 10th time is the charm. I swear I did the same thing like 10 times. If anybody's there, and you could type in the chat if you can hear me, that would be amazing. We'll get started in just a second. I'm very excited to finally get into this painting. Nice day out there. Hi, everybody. Be right back. Okay. I just tried to go play it back and see if I could hear myself, and I don't know. I can't, but thanks for letting me know. I wish I could tell you that this was easier the more I do it, but it actually just makes no sense why this is such a buggy program. Anyways, glad you have this finally. Please let me know if we do encounter tech difficulties. I guess I won't collapse in. But I do have a mic on today. I hope that helps a bit so that you can kind of hear me. And then I do, I've got my reference printed and I've got it on the screen. I'm also going to put a link up for this reference, which is one that I got from Unsplash or whatever it's called. And like I always do, I'm going to kind of mix up a little thin, transparent paint to draw with. Start with that. All right. So I have this little toned canvas with like lots of marks all over it, and I just feel like I'm going to try and use those to create this painting and kind of take some of that directional quality. Interesting. All right. We're freezing a little bit. I'm going to pause just for 1 second. Right there. All right. Yeah, that's a great question. Not sure why I've done all the updating. I don't know. It does look really delayed. Like even what I do here is just kind of delayed on screen, but it's actually looking a little bit better right now. I mean, I could always just like record this as a video and then upload it right after. I'm sure that would like solve much of the problem, but there's just something so much less fun about, you know, doing that. Rather than like, you know, have you guys paint along with me, etc. But yeah, I don't know. I'm up against a a very interesting problem, one with technology and one that I don't particularly enjoy solving, but I'm going to do it. Kind of looks like, this is my guess, that it's like a little bit better right now because I don't see it as laggy on my screen. Man, who's sick of technology? Wasn't this supposed to be better? I mean, if the machines are taking over, they're doing a really poor job. Bit better. All right. Well, do let me know, and yeah, sorry about that. I wish I knew. Oh, well. All right, so back to what I'm doing here. What I'm kind of initially starting with is just this very thinned out wash of paint. I'm using just a little bit of turp from the top of my turp jar. Okay, thank you. All right. And I'll show you what that looks like. This is my little turp jar with the coil. Here we are. That. At the top, the turp is really clean, so I can kind of take a little dip into that clean turp just to thin out the paint, but I don't really want to stir up a lot of paint sediment. And if you are a purist painter or someone who cares a little bit more about being extra particular, of course, why don't you go ahead and pour out some brand new, clean from the store Gamsol or Turpenoid into a nice clean little dish, and that's fine too. That's going to work. In fact, that's probably the best practice, but this is what I'm doing. All right, let's see. So I'm just trying to block this in. Big shapes first. Lots of angular kind of forms in this piece. Sometimes I do the initial drawing in acrylic. I think for the earlier stuff that I was doing like outside this summer, I really leaned heavily on like correcting things in acrylic. And then as the weather got colder and I just wanted to go faster, wouldn't you know it, I gave up a little bit of that process for the sake of speediness. So, well, it still is a good process and one that like is helpful. I wanted to carry less stuff. I wanted to have like a little bit less time investment, and so Yeah, acrylic has fallen by the wayside just a little bit lately. But just thinking about like the large dark shapes that we're going to include in this piece, and that kind of gives it that structure that I think if we can get that earlier, it'll be a much easier time creating this image here. So structure with the dark shapes that sort of move through the piece from left to right, top to bottom. Trim that down a little bit in size. And that's one of the things, like, as we're so early on in this piece, you can really make all sorts of very loose drawing at first, and you can still move things around quite a bit. I really like working like that. It's not the only way on earth to work, you know. You could really spend a lot more time plotting points out and being very careful and measuring. But I do enjoy some of the qualities of working a little bit more open-ended. It's like you got to find that balance, you know? I think it can depend on the day. Well, here at the studio, I can hear my music skipping, the internet service. I don't know, it's new, but my word, will it ever be good? I've heard stories. Now tell me if you've heard this. Have you heard of buildings that are just Wi-Fi dead zones that can like never get good Wi-Fi? I know this might have been a scare tactic, but I have heard of such things, and I'm starting to fear that I might be in one. Now, even though this is going to be pink, I'm just going to do a little bit of drawing with this kind of greenish mix. Because it really will set up and dry up so quickly that we needn't worry about, you know, muddying our colors too much. Plus, this is going to mix beautifully, even if they did mix a little bit. I'm all for it. So I do want to give like a sense of that structure of this flower, where like the density of the petals lies. I am not being terribly precise with this drawing. I'm kind of just treating this more as like a study of 1 or 2 sessions before I'm driven crazy by the process of going live. So, no, we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure it'll get better. Maybe I have a modem to reset next. I don't know. All right, so I've just switched over to a little bit more of a transparent mixture that focuses more on the quinacridone magenta. It's still terped out. It's really, really thin. And I'm just kind of giving like a little dusting of this. It's not terribly dry paint, but it's not thick. You know, I'm not... The consistency of paint is such a, you have to like feel it out kind of thing, right? So I'm gonna add a little bit more of Quinacridone red and a little bit of the cadmium red just to go a bit more pink. All right. And I want to thin that out so it goes on a little lighter. Okay. Thanks for the wait. Well. I see the flower, but it's not really progressing as quickly as I'd like. I'm very distracted. Well, we're getting there. We're trying. I hope this isn't too laggy. I just had to quit music. I don't know. I'll stop, but I am just worried that I'm not getting through properly. Alrighty, so there's a little bit of a faint pink back here. My general philosophy right now is just to cover as much ground as I possibly can, get it as close visually, in a really loose kind of, almost sloppy way, right? Like you don't want to be too perfect at this stage, I feel, for this type of painting. This is what I'm intending for this right now, at least. I'm going to grab a palette knife. I feel like I need more opacity for this rose to be, that's really the biggest change that I need to make right now visually. Like the background is the background. It's not as far off as the rose is from where we're going, where it's headed. And I just mean that like visually the background is closer to where it needs to be eventually than the rose is to where it needs to be eventually. if that makes sense. Very light, kind of generic pink color with quinacridones. And I don't want it everywhere. I want to make sure I can kind of just dust this over so I can paint back into it later. Mm-hmm. So just try and stay the course with like, let's develop this painting just like a Polaroid picture. You just want to see a faint version of what's going on as soon as possible, and then adjust as you develop, right? So you have to leave yourself a lot of room. You can't put on your paint too thick. You can't lock yourself in to a particular shape too early. But at the same time, and this is so interesting to me, the choices that you make, like the simplicity of, you know, what you're putting on in those first layers, it's not like you can get away with anything and you can just put any old thing on. It really has to be the right thing. So that's what I really admire about like great painters, that you can see that through the process. It wasn't just a haphazard kind of approach to that final layer of detail. It was really like this built up thing where every layer was just this amazing aspect, you know? Anyways, that's what I'd say. So I am trying very much to leave myself room. Like I said, I want to, you know, have this look like the thing, but not be completely overworked and locked in, if I can help it. Uh-oh, where's this go? So then I'm just trying to focus on like overlaps and not go absolutely crazy with getting lost in here. I want to use, like, that's why I put the shadow color on first, so that I could kind of blend up to that with the light color. I definitely missed some places. That's okay. Now, let's see. I'm also needing to like back up from this very, very soon, I think, because I'm pretty sure this drawing is absolutely, I don't know, maybe a little bit off. I have to resist the urge to use all the slang words that I hear my kids say. This drawing is, they would say this drawing is chopped, I think. I think that's the word currently. But please, you know, I'm only saying it on YouTube, but don't quote me. And I'm not trying to get every petal. I think it would be really boring to look at. I feel like what's most important is sort of that expressive, like the marks, the angles, and the rhythm that you're sort of putting those marks in with is just a really, I don't know, that's the more important thing in a study. You certainly don't want to slow that pace down and get all picky and try and get every little thing just so, you know, it would just look so out of place. So you have to keep the freshness. It's visually looking so much closer now with that pink, so I think that was a very Good color to go into. I'm going to keep going with it a little bit more, but then we're going to move out. Move out. I also want to change up this color. It's a little more cadmium and quinacridone red together, so it's less purple. I might just need to clean my brush, etc. But let's just see if I can get a little bit more going with the pink before I move on into some background and other things. Okay. So I actually feel like the connection is like so much better now that I turned off music, which I guess when I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, of course, that makes a lot of sense. I should have started with that. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. I don't really think of music as taking up a whole lot of bandwidth, but maybe that was the problem. So I'm just trying to cover a little more ground visually, just try to get a little bit closer to what it's going to be. Oop. I'm even going to just like bring in a little bit of that pink into the background because there are other flowers back here. I want to kind of just like bring a little of that color throughout. Even back here, I might kind of hint at the direction of this rose with a few marks. And let's see, there's some green. Pink in here, it's kind of nice. How does this all sort of fit together? Like, where's that pattern sort of lead you, right? Like through this area. Much of this is going to get covered, but you know, you can put a little color underneath. This is sort of a, oh, I keep bumping into my palette camera, sorry. It's like a little plan for things that will be left showing through. Okay, I'm just adding a little white to this color. Gosh, there's so much to do. So this is the point at which I'm like, oh no, there's too much. I'll never finish, you know? That's definitely that overwhelming feeling, but I think when we feel that, it's just a sign. You're doing a hard thing. It's gonna be okay. No, it's time to step back, look at the big picture, and like stop getting sucked into details. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so we've advanced, it's moving closer to where we need it. I feel like one of the next biggest things is going to be to get some greens and green blues going. So let's start there. Now, I want to check. I think this connection looks okay. I'm doing this, I'm seeing it on the screen at relatively the same time. I hope that the sound is okay. but somehow I feel it is better. All right. All right. Now I did get a very beautiful new color, Perylene Black. It is absolutely not black at all. It's like a dark green almost. It's just so rich, like sap green, but like richer and darker. So there's almost no need for sap green anymore because why bother? Why bother? It's the more powerful thing. It's just like it's got the sap green in there, but it also goes above and beyond. So new favorite color, Perylene Black. Just look at what this color can do. All right, let's see if, I hope this works as beautifully as I hope. It does, yeah, look how lovely that is. And I don't know if you can tell like on camera, but it is so transparent. It is just the prettiest color. And I'm gonna try and again, like in the earliest stage here, I was really thinking about those dark pattern, you know, kind of pathways that like lead you around the painting. And I think at just about every opportunity, reinforcing those is somewhat helpful. So I'm gonna try to go back and just kind of restate the interesting angles and like the dark shapes that I was seeing earlier. Maybe that's going on a little dark, a little bit too dark. So, oops, sorry, palette cam. What I need to do is turn the handle. All right, hold please. Okay. All right, so we've got our rose blocked in. The drawing is, you know, workable for a rose. And you could do this next stage here. Again, I'm using this like really dark color, but it's super transparent. It's very thin and I can work back into this pretty easily. However, maybe you don't have Perylene Black. I didn't have that color until very recently. A sap green or like even mixed with an ultramarine blue or any of your darker blues, Prussian blue. I'll use some now. I love a good amount of variety, and I think especially in those transparent darks that stay sort of transparent, you can really like pack in a little color variation. There's some now. A lot of contrast, like right through there. I'm trying to give it like a little something in the leaves, like a little visual interest with some transparent paint that I can sort of hopefully let show through. And so I used some of these little marks just to kind of create some a little interest, but you know, there are things we can do to these surfaces so that they're not just feeling like we're painting in like a wall or you know, just filling in like a paint by number situation. So I think like layering things and really taking full advantage of the different consistencies of paint during the painting process, that really helps. It's a fun aspect to kind of play around with. So. All distant back here, a little softer edge. There's things that we can do to kind of make these marks feel like they're receding a little bit more, and one of those things is just having like marks with a bit of a softer edge. Sharper edges are going to advance toward the viewer, and softer edges are going to recede. And I'm just kind of like setting this up still with this very transparent paint. I'm going to go in here and do some opaque marks in a little bit. I'm going to go a little more yellow. All right. Just looking at the clock, I think I'm about like 40 minutes in. And that's probably okay for like a little 2-session study. So just kind of thinking about like the pace that you plan to work at. It's not that it always turns out that way, but sometimes forcing a quicker painting can be a really great way to solve problems that you otherwise would just kind of like chew on for far too long. And you just have to like figure it out really fast. It's so informative. But I also think you don't have to set up like a full palette of oil paint to do that kind of like mental exercise of like, you know, thinking your way through a whole painting or picture, however you want to call it. Because I think a pastel can be a painting, of course. Even like marker pen, that kind of sketchbook stuff that you can use, I think is a really good way. I just mean like going through like one entire painting process in a very quick amount of time. That's how I was raised. All right. And it was definitely like the mode of instruction, I think, in art school. Quick study, alla prima painting. Let's see. I have to make some kind of situation out of this area. That's a little bit chaotic right now. It's maybe a lot bit chaotic right now, but that's okay. We're gonna see. All right. So round and round we go. We're kind of just seeing this develop and, you know, really keeping it loose, keeping it not locked into like one particular edge or line yet. I'm still definitely coming back through with the rose. In fact, I'm going to take that edge and flick that right through. There's a lot of places where right now just flicking that background color sort of into the rose is kind of a nice way to tie the rose into this environment. So thinking about where we have sharper edges and then opposing some of that with like softer edges. Because if everything is sharp edged, it will not look three-dimensional. It's like so scary to lose an edge. I was working with a student today in class that, you know, we did this exact situation with a still life that they were doing, and like really softening the edge and letting go of like, okay, it has to be this one way. Like here's the line and we see it all and it's very clear. But if you lose like the boundary between that edge and the background, sometimes you actually end up with a much more believable and realistic form. And honestly, not just sometimes. All the time. All right. We're back to a little pink. Now I should be a little bit more specific. I'm going to mix a slightly cooler pink over here. That's the quinacridone magenta. And now I'm really trying to like lay on that paint a little thicker, kind of a bit of variety in the color. I added some cobalt teal. We're just flying through this rose. All right, I'd be really curious to know if anyone, I know I've talked to a couple people that would like to kind of paint along with me, which I think is great. Like I can always link to references if that's what, you know, people want to try out. And I can definitely, you know, I know I'm kind of working through this rather quickly, but I think just kind of getting those ideas, working from the reference, you can pause it if you like. Let me know if you do try that. And I would also love to see it if indeed you do. All right. So more opaque with a little bit more white out here, and then we're going to get into some darker colors and try and get the center a little bit more developed. step back from this for a second. All right. All right, so I have this little kind of darker color that I want to mix up with quinacridone. I used a little alizarin crimson, which is just like quinacridone, but just a little bit more brown. I'm going to use some ultramarine blue. I just want to get into the center of the flower a little bit so I can kind of see how that dark color is going to look against the light. So let's see. Pretty nice. I think I like it. And like I said, I've kind of left some of these areas unpainted that will get this darker, more vibrant shadow color. Or I've tried to. Or I'm going to use the unpainted areas for that purpose. Or a little bit of both. Such subtle color changes in this flower. It's so pretty. And I think you just need like every single red on the market, and you know, in my opinion. But that's not to say that you can just open a tube of paint and like the right red will be there. But just for mixing purposes, the more you have, the more ability to kind of shift that red from one temperature to the next a little more easily and get a better range, I think. It all started out so simply. I only had 2 reds on my palette for many, many, many years. And now it's become a little bit more populated in that area of the palette. And actually many areas of the palette. I really enjoy all of these new paint colors that have come my way, and I'm not sorry about it. And really, I can't believe I didn't even squeeze out one of my new favorite colors, which maybe I'm going to, I don't know. There are no guarantees. It is Permanent Rose. Here, drawing wise. Now that side is almost like a little peachy. It's almost got like a little bit of like a yellow to it. So I just added some yellow ochre. Let's see how that works. I like it. Sorry, palette cam. Maybe a little. There we go. This is a very peach color. I don't know if you can kind of tell on camera. I'm gonna have to get in there and like take a closer look in a little bit, but yeah, it's got a lot more yellow in it, and it's kind of doing what I wanted to in terms of like giving that form a little bit more three-dimensionality, right? I think it's because there is so much purple in some of these other pinks, and that's really my underpainting, and like deepest shadow color was mixed in with a little bit of that purple. So not only is there like a little peach in this rose, but it's kind of working well with the underpainting color, I think. All right, when this is dry, there should be a little bit of a more sharp, you know, dark area underneath that petal, and maybe I'll come back for that another time. But before I wrap this up, I do want to just blast through like one more area maybe. I definitely want to make sure that I don't leave a giant unpainted area that I'll have to really work hard to catch up. There's that. There's that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Am I obsessing over the rose without knowing it and just kind of zoning out and not walking away and not following my own advice and not working into another area? Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Pretty much that's what's happening here. And I will be stopping that. Stopping that right now. There we go. That's the rose for today. Let's see. About 1 or 2 more minutes. So I'm going to do a very quick little background catch up. Now visually this background, and I mean like distant background, right? It's not too far off what we need, but there's no paint yet. No paint. So let's just throw a little bit of my Perylene Black, a little Cobalt Blue. And don't worry, no Cobalt Blue was harmed in the making of that color. Oh, I will get a new brush though. So I've made this like really pretty, I think really pretty. I have like blue-green color over here, cobalt, and perylene black. I like it. Let's paint that everywhere. That's very pretty. I bet that would be very, very pretty with just a little tiny bit of yellow ochre. Mm-hmm. And it is, and guess what it is? It's a toothpaste color. That's what I was always told I painted with in college, toothpaste colors. And I did, and you know why? It's because toothpaste colors are the best colors. So, thank you for the compliment. But it is really fun to go back and kind of carve up like your marks that were so thin and transparent, right? Like this is why. This is why, because we can kind of save some of those marks and they become just like maybe loose indications of leaves, stems, petals, distant objects, whatever it is. But they really add to like the texture of this thing. And above all, we do not want an uninteresting and flat area, right? I mean, it should be interesting and it should be fun to look at. And I think like playing with that consistency is a really good way to get that effect. And it's almost like I'm taking that underpainting color that I had. It's very close to that underpainting color. And I'm just bringing that back to the top layer as I'm painting with this color that looks very similar to it. And so you can kind of see some of that underpainting color show through, and sometimes it sits right by like a top layer version of that color that's very similar. I just think that is a really cool and interesting aspect to layered paintings. I think that's really beautiful. I've always been like, you know, drawn to those really expressive brushstroke pictures that you see, that you can kind of see like how the painting was created and in what order, because you can tell that like certain marks and colors like lay underneath others, you know? And I'm pretty sure that everyone picked up on you know, how to kind of get there a lot more quickly in art school. I don't think I got the hang of how to do that until like far later. I didn't really understand that layering process as well as I hope I do now, and as well as I should have. But you know, it's really interesting, and I'm still kind of trying to find ways to like strategize about using it and making like really interesting results happen in the way these layers interact. So I do think that you can do a lot with the planning of your painting, so far as, you know, like we did with this pink, we kind of place that around and underneath with the intention of like making little marks that might kind of land over it. So I'll just drag that brush right across. And you can kind of see there's a definite overlap and there's an order there. It's not like a flat surface. You really see those marks kind of like interacting, woven together. So anyways, that's what I'm going for. That's what I'm doing. All right, but to conclude for today, One little tiny bit more. Just want to lay down a little bit more paint in here. And I try as much as possible, and I do, you know, like everybody else, we all get like very like sidetracked about, okay, I'm gonna work on this area, and then you find yourself some totally other place. But I really am trying to like leave this painting fairly universally finished, right? Like, so one part isn't totally unfinished while we have, you know, a highly detailed and totally refined other part. It should look like it came from the same batch, you know? Like, we don't want anything like too different. And it's so interesting because this sounds so cliche, but like someone said this as a teacher to me once. You're not really the same painter from like one day to the next. And I think it's actually true. Like, your marks sometimes, just like try as you might, they just look like a different person is painting them. It's just not quite fitting. If you leave a painting for too long and come back to it, you might have kind of found that it's just really hard to get back in. So, you know, just leaving this like with a nice even approach, I think will just be an easier way to like get back into it and finish it. When I do, but I want to have at least something for like all of the elements, you know? It's just got to be a little further along, and then I will stop for today. A little more separation on that leaf, maybe. That was not the most like graceful edge of a leaf I've ever drawn, but I just need a little contrast as almost like a note. All right, and more importantly, like more important than, you know, the rose almost looking like a rose, which it looks rose-like right now. We're gonna be okay, I think. But I don't want to like mess up the big compositional shape. That's more important than the rose looking like a rose. So I'm gonna step back one more time, and then I'm gonna tell you one more thing, and then I'm gonna sign off. And that thing is, for oil painters especially, if you're going to work on this a second session, go back right now and flick out any brush strokes that require a little bit of softening. You can kind of see me doing this. This is a really beautiful effect. This is a good time to like kind of overlap things again, and I'm just like cleaning off the brush between swipes so that I'm not muddying anything. I'm just really like giving it a quick directional flick. You've done all this work to put like all this wet paint all over the surface, so you might as well take advantage of the most amazing things that oil paint can do. One of them being the directional flick. Now it can be overdone. So don't overdo it, like I might be doing right now. But, you know, it's a great way to like soften it, to leave things ready for the next time, and or to get rid of brush strokes that were just like a little too much. Okay. That's that. Thank you guys so much for attending, and I will see you later.